Well, match day 23 is here as we approach the halfway point in the championship season, and we are here to predict all 12 fixtures this weekend. We'll give you our scores and the reasons why, and of course I'll encourage you to do the same in the comments. If you beat or match my overall score, you will get a shout out in the next recap, which will be out on Saturday night after the fixtures as soon as I can get it recorded and edited. And that will be for the Boxing Day fixture list, which of course takes place on Tuesday. We'll have a quick recap of what happened in match day 22, where unfortunately the perfect scores did elude me. 6 correct outcomes out of the 12 games in a weekend that was full of both surprise results and a number of huge surprise scorelines. It was goals galore everywhere, just 3 teams failing to score, and just one game that didn't have 2 or more goals in it. That means that it was a fairly low scoring weekend across the board, but 5 of you did manage to beat my score, and 1 of you pulled off a ridiculous score. So let's go and get through the 5 of you, because BPK got 7 points with a correct score for that 2-2 draw in the East Anglian derby. Tony popped up with 8 and a perfect score at Sheffield Wednesday. Finn got 10, the first in double figures, a perfect score at Wednesday and for Middlesbrough. Brian with 11, fair play to you, that was a cracking effort. The 2-2 draw in the East Anglian derby and Middlesbrough's win were your perfect scores. But then RZL, what can we say? 14 points this match day. Almost got more as well. Got 4-1 for Watford instead of 5. But you did get 3 perfect scores. The Championship's favourite scoreline between Millwall and Huddersfield. A big 2-2 draw in the East Anglian derby. And the Sheffield Wednesday win at home to QPR. 14 points and made us all look bad. An inspired effort from you. But let's move on to match day 23, where we've all got a chance to get more points. Let's start with the 2 games that are on Friday night, and the first of them is Bristol City versus Hull City. Both sides picked up important victories last weekend. Bristol City with the 1-0 win at home to Sunderland, Hull City with a 3-0 win at home to Cardiff. Hull have been excellent for most of the season. They're in that top 6, and Liam Rosenior has signed a new 3-year deal at the club now. They were dominant, they deserved to win the game. And you know what? I can only say what I keep saying. I have been so impressed with him since he's come in. They're now adding that attacking flair to what was a solid defensive base. And they're a good side to watch. They're going to be in that race for the playoffs. Bristol City, not quite as convincing, but a very important win nonetheless against Sunderland. Probably second best for the most part, both in terms of possession, attempts and clear-cut chances. But a Tommy Conway penalty got them a 1-0 victory. And they defended in the end and held on, which is all that matters. So an important win there for Liam Manning's side after 4 without, and crucially a clean sheet, which is probably even more important at the moment. So it makes this game quite tricky to predict, and I was probably going to edge towards 2-1 for Hull, but on Friday night we don't often get that many goals. So as a result, I'm going to tone it down a little bit. And although they have scored in all of their last 4, I'm going to go for Bristol City to lose this one narrowly by 1-0 at home to Hull. The second game on Friday night is Swansea City versus Preston North End. At the time of recording on Tuesday, Swansea City still do not have a permanent manager in place. They lost 2-1 against Middlesbrough at the weekend. Wasn't the best game, to be honest. It was a pretty even one. Not many chances there. But the ones that were there were great opportunities. And if you go by the clear-cut chances, Swansea probably should have edged it. I think a draw may have been a fairer result, but you've got to take your chances in the Championship. And Swansea didn't do that, and defensively, they just never look like keeping a clean sheet, which is a big problem. For Preston, they may have stopped the rot against Huddersfield in midweek, but what an awful performance against Watford. A 5-1 defeat, and you've got to be honest, they folded. They conceded that equaliser just before half-time, and in the second half, they just quit. It wasn't actually the worst performance in the world, because if you look at the stats, you might think, oh, that was a fairly even game, but the opportunities they gave up to Watford were brilliant chances, and towards the end, they looked deflated, they looked down, and it's a really worrying time for Preston. I know they picked up that 1 win, and remarkably, they're still in 8th place, but the goal difference is only worsened by the bottom 4. And they never look like they're going to dominate a game. It's so frustrating and so strange to watch. In this one, I do feel I have to go for Swansea, just because Preston are so out of form. Away from home, yes, they won their last game, but otherwise, they've not been scoring goals frequently. Was 3 blanks before the last 2 games, and when they've scored, they've ended up conceding plenty. So for me, Swansea to pip this one, and I'm going to go by 2-1. On to Saturday, and we've got one lunchtime kickoff, which is a huge game in the race for automatic promotion. It is Leeds United versus Ipswich Town, second v third, separated by 10 points. And you feel if Leeds are going to get to that top two, they've got to win this one. But they come into it without a win in their last two, picking up just 1 point against two sides from last season's playoffs after that frustrating defeat at Sunderland, a 1-1 draw at home to Coventry, gave up their lead almost as soon as they got it. And again, they were the better side, but they're going through a little spell of not taking chances. And while they have been a little bit better defensively, they just haven't been getting the 2 or 3 goal wins that their performances at times have merited. For Ipswich, a 2-2 draw at home to Norwich. I've got to be honest, I only saw the last 15 of this when I got to Bournemouth on Saturday. But when I look at that game, it was attack v defence in the end. I will say I'm a little concerned about Ipswich defensively at home. They are far too open, but away from home, they've really shut up shop for most of the season, and they've been very tight both defensively and not really that free-flowing going forward. So it is going to make this interesting. I feel Leeds will dominate the game, but I wonder if Ipswich are going to try and drag this into a home-style match, because I feel it gives them a better chance of winning. They dominated the ball against Norwich, but if you go back to their last away game, a really good result at Watford, and another one of their gritty away displays. So I feel this game's going to be tight. And I feel it's going to be disappointing. I think it's going to be a really low-scoring game. I don't think it's going to be great for the neutrals, as many will expect it to be. I'm going to go for Leeds United to win it, just because they've got a better defensive record over the season. If Ipswich get flowing, they'll score goals, but that's generally only happened at home this year. I'm going to go for an ugly 1-0 and a crucial one for Leeds United. Let's move on to the rest of the games, which are all 3 p.m. kickoffs, and we start with two sides that had very different weekends. It is Blackburn versus Watford. Blackburn lost 4-0 at Southampton. Watford won 5-1 at Preston. Watford took advantage of a side that have been playing poorly, and fair play to them, you know, because they learned from their mistakes of last season, and they stuck with the manager they appointed at the start, who, again, is probably the best man for the job, as it was last year. And this time they're getting their rewards. There were a few eyebrows raised when Ishmael was given a new deal in 20th place. But now they're up in 9th. They're only 5 off the playoffs. And they're starting to look like a team. I know Preston aren't the best opposition, but they gave Ipswich and Southampton a good game. They won the 2 prior to that. The only team that comfortably beat them were Leicester, and that's understandable for anyone. So really decent signs coming from Watford now. Not going to score that many and come up against a defence that quits that often, but very much a positive trajectory for Watford at the minute. For Blackburn, much the opposite, as they made it 3 defeats in 4 at Southampton. The red card at 1-0 definitely caused them some harm, and late on, they just run out of steam. It's the least attacking threat we've seen Blackburn have all season, but again, probably understandable in the circumstances. And in the end, Southampton were pretty good value for their 4-0 victory, and Blackburn will need to bounce back, which, to be fair, if you take out the Leeds game, at home they've been pretty good recently. Beat Bristol City, beat Birmingham. They don't often keep a home clean sheet, but they do score goals at home as well. And this game, I've got a feeling, is going to be very different to what we saw last week. Watford playing on a counter against Blackburn will cause a threat, and I think will get a goal. But Blackburn at home, when not playing the very top sides, are a very different proposition. And as a result, I'm going to go for them to nick it by 2-1, but only because I've gone for a few 1-1 draws further down, and I didn't want to go for it here. So 2-1 Blackburn, but no result would shock me in this one. Let's move on to the banker of the weekend. I think there is no doubt that everyone in the comments will be predicting a home win. It is Leicester City versus Rotherham United. And my word, Rotherham have not started that well under Liam Richardson. They did manage to score 2 goals away from home at Plymouth, which was progress, and they only lost it in the 96th minute, despite being down to 10. Daniel Ayala, there's got to be questions asked now. 2 red cards in 2 games for him. Of course, served his suspension, came back and got sent off again. That's something that Liam Richardson will take note of. But overall, Plymouth were the better side. Hard to judge it based on what happened in the match, but they showed fighting spirit and didn't fold when they went down to 10 at 2-1. And that is a very different story to what was happening under Matt Taylor. So perhaps a positive to be taken there. But going away to Leicester, the runaway leaders who, let's be fair, had a little bit of a tough end against Birmingham, but Birmingham played into their hands. They gave them 3-on-3 on the counter-attack, and Leicester took full advantage with Mavididi and Dewsbury Hall. But it weren't at their best defensively, gave away a couple of soft goals, And he did look under threat a bit from the long set pieces as well, so I wonder if Rotherham will be able to take advantage of that. Overall though, Leicester still flying at the top. With one of Leeds and Ipswich at least certain to drop points, this could be a very good weekend for them if they get the expected win. I'm going to go big in this one. I do feel that Leicester are going to be dominant. Rotherham away from home, they were better under Liam Richardson last weekend, but this is a different proposition. I think if 1 or 2 go in, it could become a very tricky day. I'm going to go for Leicester to win by 4-0. The next game is between two sides separated by just 6 points. It is 13th v 5th. It is Middlesbrough v West Brom. A note again, say I'm recording this on Tuesday, so it is before Middlesbrough's EFL Cup tie midweek. But they did win 2-1 at Swansea in midweek. They needed it after 3 successive defeats against sides in the top 6, but they've got to start closing that gap and they've got to find consistency. It was a late winner in an even game, and as we mentioned, Swansea probably had the chances to get a result out of that. Not the best defensively, Middlesbrough. It's a big concern after last season. 8 conceded in their last 4, and they can't afford to do that against West Brom, who are normally a bit more frugal at the back and don't offer up quite so many chances. Having said that, they weren't brilliant against Stoke, but we've got to bear in mind here, Stoke had 1 shot on target. It was a cross from Lyndon Gooch that went over the keeper's head and into the corner. There's not much you can do about it. Otherwise, they didn't perhaps take the chances. They didn't create bundles of them, but it would have been 1-0 on pretty much any other day, and you would have considered that a decent result. So West Brom is still doing well, up in 5th place. This game, I feel they're going to put up a threat for Borough. I'm going to go for the same scoreline as they got last weekend, a 1-1 draw at the Riverside, because I just can't separate these two sides at Borough Stadium. Into the second half, and we start with Norwich City versus Huddersfield Town. A crucial draw for Huddersfield away at Millwall to bounce back from that Preston one. It was a 97th minute penalty that got them the result. Again, staying in the game, defending doggedly. And in the end, they probably just about deserved a point. It's 4-1 draws in the last 6. Of course, disappointment against Preston, but they're picking up results. They're getting people back. And do you know what? I think there's a decent run round the corner for Huddersfield. I'm not sure it starts in this game, though, because Norwich are unbeaten in 4. Okay, they were clinging on for dear life at the end of that Ipswich game, but they certainly had a threat going forward, so you've got to give them credit. Rowe popping up with a couple of goals, and Norwich keeping that crucial unbeaten run going against Ipswich, their rivals. They did win at home to poor opposition the game before in Sheffield Wednesday, who otherwise had been in a decent run too. So I think based on that, it depends what Huddersfield are able to do to restrict them, because Preston came and played for a 0-0 and got it. Sheffield Wednesday weren't quite as solid and ended up getting beat comfortably. I'm edging more towards what happened in the Sheffield Wednesday game, because Huddersfield, for all the 1-1 draws, have not kept a clean sheet in ages. As a result, I'm going to go for Norwich to win and win comfortably, as they're on the upward trajectory now as well, by 3-1 at the weekend. Let's move from East Anglia to the southwest as Plymouth Argyle host Birmingham City. Birmingham ended that wretched away run with a 1-0 win at Cardiff last midweek, but they were then beaten against Leicester, and I don't want to be too critical because they actually played pretty well. They created a lot of chances from long throws, from set pieces, from wide areas as well. And you know what? They put up a fight towards the end, which was good to see, but the tactics, you have to blame the manager on this occasion. Defensively, it was just bonkers to set up 3-on-3 against the best counter-attacking team in the Championship, with bundles of pace in all 3 players, with 2 midfielders who can break away at a speed where the Birmingham midfielders can't keep up. It was always going to work out that way. I don't understand the theory of setting up that way. There's a difference between no-fear football and pure naivety, and the way they set up, they gifted Leicester chances, and on the counter, there were 2 or 3 more warnings. It could have been more, but going forward, they looked a threat. They are utilising set pieces well, and in the end, they put up a fight, which you have to give them credit for against the best side in the league. And there's not many that have troubled Leicester that much defensively, so credit on that front. For Plymouth, on the other hand, they love goals at home. We've mentioned it, them and Ipswich up from League One, the 2 biggest scorers at home. Yes, they struggled against 10 men for a while, and perhaps that setup actually hinders them at home. But Morgan Whittaker kept going to the end, and a 96th minute winner picks up a crucial 3 points for them. They were just edging towards that relegation zone a bit, so they need to pick up those home wins, and that one puts them 6 points clear again, and it was just about deserved in the end. But defensively, they've got to be better. I can see them really struggling with Birmingham set pieces. They're going to struggle with long throws. They're going to struggle with corners. But I just feel that Birmingham, if they set up the same way, Plymouth will absolutely rinse them on the counter. I could see this being 4-3 in another day, but I'm going to go quite calm this weekend. Not often we get two bonkers scoring championship match days in a row. So I'm going to go, rather than 4-3, I'm going to bring it down a bit. I'm going to go for 2-1 to Plymouth Argyle. But don't be surprised if there's more goals than that. Into the final third, we go for QPR versus Southampton. And after not predicting QPR to win 3 games that they won, I've predicted 2 wins against 2 of the sides around them. What have they done? They've not won either of them. They lost 2-1 to Sheffield Wednesday in a game that tightens up that bottom 3. Wednesday moved just 4 points behind them, and to throw it away from 1-0 up with 5 minutes to go is a very worrying sign. I mean, ultimately, it was a really poor game. Not much inspiration in the final third from either. A lot of the play in the middle third. A lot of little fouls and stoppages in play, but in the end, a lot of corners towards the end for Sheffield Wednesday. They put a bit of pressure on, and they ended up nicking the victory. So for QPR, some worrying signs, because those Plymouth and Sheffield Wednesday games were real opportunities, and now they come into a bit of a tougher run. Southampton played Blackburn off the park, albeit 3 of the 4 goals came after they were reduced to 10 men. But Southampton, they kept the ball, they created chances, and this time they actually took them, albeit it took till late on to get a couple. And fair play to Carlos Alcaraz as well, because he produced an absolutely pathetic penalty earlier in the game and then bounced back to score a late goal, which you could see was much of a relief to him. So fair play for bouncing back, because the penalty was abysmal, but you can only make amends, which he did. So for this game, I think it's going to be pretty tricky. We're going to see QPR probably set up a bit more like they did under Gareth Ainsworth, try and keep the ball in the defensive third, but ultimately set up very cautiously. And we should remember as well, before the Wednesday game, it was 3 clean sheets in a row. And where they set up a bit more defensively against Hull, it actually worked well for them. We've seen in those types of games that Southampton have struggled to break teams down this year. And away from home, they have had a lot of either 1-1 draws or very late 2-1 wins. Those are the scores I'm stuck between. I'm going to stick with the Championship's favourite scoreline. There's got to be a couple this weekend. So I'm going to go for 1-1 here. A frustrating one for Southampton. We move on to the side that beat QPR last week, which is Sheffield Wednesday, who host Cardiff City. Cardiff are starting to produce what we expected when Errol Balut took charge. They're sliding down the division. They've scored 1 goal in their last 5 games and have conceded a few as well. And we always mentioned this, didn't we? For Cardiff, after their summer signings, once they had their first 11 fit, they look really decent. When you've got 3 or 4 injuries and you look at that team that played last week, there's not much midfield creativity. There's a lot of hard workers, but not much else. Hull, to be honest with you, dominated the game, deserved to win it comfortably and did. And for Cardiff, it's a few worrying signs at the minute, but they shouldn't panic. They're still above where most would have expected them to be. And they've just got to get a couple of those creative players back and maybe look to add one on loan in January. For Sheffield Wednesday, a very important comeback against QPR. As we mentioned in the last segment, it was a really poor game. But Danny Roll is doing his bit now. He's not got a squad that suits his style. He's not able to play exactly how he wants, but he's won 3 and 4. He's starting to make Hillsborough a bit of a fortress, and he's getting the players and the fans on side. They can get to January in touching distance, which it now looks like they will, just 6 points away from Huddersfield. Then I feel like they've got a chance, which at the start of the season, and even when Roll came in, I thought it would take a miracle. But I stand by what I said in that manager special, that his appointment, if they stick with him, will be a masterstroke. For Sheffield Wednesday, I'm going to go for a win here because Cardiff don't look like scoring, let alone winning. We know what happened when I did this with QPR. They went and lost the game. So Cardiff will probably end up winning this one. But I'm going to go for Sheffield Wednesday on current form and logic by 2-0 at home to Cardiff. For the final 2, we start with Stoke City versus Millwall. At the time of recording, Stoke City are managerless, but it looks like Steven Schumacher is on his way. Perhaps a similar approach of going for a successful championship manager. Not that that's worked the last 3 or 4 times they've done it. But a 1-1 draw for them against West Brom at the weekend. Look, they offered nothing going forward. Their goal was an absolute fluke. But they defended okay, and they were fairly solid. So back-to-back 1-1 draws just keeps them above that dotted line after the run of defeats under Alex Neil. Whereas for Millwall, a frustrating 1-1 draw at home to Huddersfield. That late penalty which got the visitors a point. Millwall, though, despite dominating the game, weren't hugely inspiring. They didn't have bundles of possession and it didn't create that many clear openings, but they did manage to get a point, which again stopped the mini rot for them. After that brilliant start for Joe Edwards though, it is 2 points out of 6 games, and Millwall now find themselves just 2 clear of the relegation zone. We did say when Gary Rowett left, I know it ended up being a mutual decision, but I thought it was going to be a tough season for them, and appointing a manager for his first senior job was always going to be tricky. They've got to get to January and bring in his style of players, or it could be a tough second half of the year. But for this one, I could have gone for 1-1 again, but I just feel Stoke will nick it because I'm banking on Schumacher being in charge and getting a new manager bounce. Whether it'll work for him long term, I don't know. But I just think having a new manager in and someone that's done well elsewhere will actually get the fans up for it and get a few more in. So for this weekend only, Stoke to pit Millwall. I'm going to go by 2-1. A big game for both though, as they look to move clear of the relegation zone. And the final game is between two of the sides who were in the playoffs last year. It is Sunderland, now managed by Mick Beale, against Coventry City under Mark Robins. We've got a newest serving manager against, I think, the oldest serving manager in the league. And Coventry, a decent 1-1 draw at Leeds and against Southampton prior to that, in fairness. They're starting to look all right now. I know they're 9 points off the playoffs. I know they're drawing a few too many. But defensively, they're finding a little bit of solidity. And that is just 2 conceded in their last 3. They've had a pretty tricky run of fixtures with 3 of the top 4 in their last 4 games, and they've only lost 1 of them, so you've got to give them credit. The game they should have won against Birmingham, they won comfortably, and they're getting a couple of key attacking players back to fitness. I think they will add a couple in January. I still think they're going to go on a little run, but this game at Sunderland will be tricky. Sunderland fans aren't happy with Mick Beale, but we know what fans are like in the North East. They'll get behind their side regardless. And if he can get a good performance out of them, then you never know what could happen. You can find the manager special discussing the Mick Beale appointment up in the eye above. Thank you for the incredible support with it. I'm not sure this is the right decision. I was a massive fan of the work Tony Mowbray was doing. And the fact that he had a quick young side playing on the counter was great to watch. Mick Beale's sides at both QPR and Rangers were quite methodical on the ball, liked to keep possession, liked to play through the thirds, and like to have a patient build-up, which I'm not sure suits this team. It's one of many problems I've got with it, but I'm not going to go over that whole manager special again. For this game, I'm going to go for Coventry to nick it. I feel they'll leave spaces on the counter Sunderland, and I'm going to go for Coventry to nick this one by 2-1. But ultimately, we have no idea what's going to happen in Mick Beale's first game. So with that out of the way, let's have a quick recap of what I've gone for in matchday 23. I've gone for Leicester to reach the halfway point in style with a 4-0 win at home to Rotherham. The only other side I've got to score more than 2 are Norwich with a 3-1 win at home to Huddersfield. And I've also gone for Mick Beale to lose his first game in charge of Sunderland and potentially Steven Schumacher to have the winning bounce at Stoke City. We'll find out if he's in charge by the weekend. There'll be a manager special if he is. But those are just my predictions for matchday 23. Do you agree or disagree with them? Let me know in the comment section and give me your predictions for the weekend as well. As I mentioned before, if you beat or match my score, you will get a shout out in the next recap. That episode for matchday 24 and the Boxing Day fixtures will be out late on Saturday night after I've recorded and edited that one. But thank you very much for watching as always. If you did enjoy this video, please do put a thumbs up on it. Subscribe for regular content from the Honest Football Podcast. We've got loads of manager specials from the Championship, which you can find up in the eye above. We also had our Premier League predictions yesterday. We've got our League One shorts as well. And more importantly than any of that, a Merry Christmas to all of you. Have a great festive period. And most importantly, a get well soon to our skipper, Tom Lockyer. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time on Saturday as we look ahead to the Boxing Day matches.